I walked across the stage to thunderous applause and still felt completely alone because the loudest sound in that room wasn't clapping. It was the silence where my family should have been. A banner with my name hung above the podium, bright and proud, like someone actually cared. The lights were so harsh, they made everything look unreal, like a cheap TV set. I squinted into the crowd, scanning rows and rows of strangers holding phones and bouquets, row after row after row. And then the section I saved for my family. Empty seats. All of them. No mother, no father, no brother, no sisters. Just air. I swallowed hard and forced my face into something that resembled a smile, because that's what you do when you've worked 4 years for a moment like this. You smile. You keep your shoulders straight. You don't let the cameras catch the crack in you. But my hands were shaking so badly I had to curl them into fists inside my gown. As I took my diploma cover, the dean whispered, "Congratulations." I nodded like a robot and walked off stage with my lungs burning, like I'd been holding my breath for years. And the worst part, this wasn't about money or travel or an emergency. My family wasn't there because I refused to tell the men in my house when I got my period. That's not me being dramatic. That's literally what happened. It started when I was 11. I remember the exact day because I thought I was dying. I was sitting on the toilet, staring down at the water, frozen in disbelief. My stomach hurt, my underwear was ruined, and I felt this heavy sinking shame I couldn't explain. I called for my mother in a voice that didn't feel like mine. She came in, saw it, and immediately softened. She gave me pads, told me it was normal, told me I was becoming a young woman. She tried to make it sound magical, like I'd just been accepted into a secret club. But then later that night, after dinner, my father called me into the living room. My brother was sitting on the couch with the remote, acting like this was just another Tuesday. My sisters were in the kitchen, whispering and giggling like they could sense something big was happening. My father patted the armchair across from him. Sit. His voice had that tone. The one that meant this wasn't a conversation. It was a verdict. I sat down, clutching the edge of the cushion. My cheeks were burning. I could feel my mother standing behind him, silent, wiping her hands on a dish towel like she didn't want to be part of it. My father leaned forward. "Your mother told me you got your first period." I wanted to disappear into the carpet. He held up his hand before I could speak. "Listen, you live under my roof. In this house we communicate. You are not going to be secretive about things that affect the household." I blinked. "It doesn't affect the household." My brother snorted like I'd said something stupid. My father's eyes narrowed. "It affects your behavior. It affects your moods. And I need to know as your father when to expect you to be hormonal." That word hit me like a slap. Hormonal. Like I was a ticking bomb. I looked at my mother, desperate. She wouldn't meet my eyes. My father continued, calm, righteous, like he was explaining a law of nature. "From now on, when you get your period each month, you will tell me. And you will tell your brother. That way we can all be prepared." My throat tightened. Prepared for what? He sighed like I was exhausting him already. "Prepared for you to be sensitive, irritable, crying over nothing. You know, the usual." I felt my eyes sting, which immediately made me angry because it proved his point. I swallowed it down. "That's private." "I don't want to." He cut me off again. "Privacy is earned. And you're a child." I clenched my teeth. "I'm not trying to hide anything. I just don't want to announce it." My brother laughed under his breath. "Gross." I whipped my head toward him, humiliation turning hot in my chest. "It's not gross. It's normal." My father's voice sharpened. "Enough. You will tell us. It's courteous. It's respectful. It's what a good daughter does." Good daughter? That phrase became a weapon in our house. A leash. After that, every month felt like a deadline. Like my body wasn't mine anymore. The bleeding wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the expectation that I would deliver a report like a weather forecast. My mother tried to make it sound gentle, even when it wasn't. "Just tell them, honey," she'd say, like she was asking me to pass the salt. It keeps the peace. But peace in our house always meant my silence. The first time I refused, it was 2 months later. I'd gotten my period at school and spent the whole day feeling gross and panicked. When I got home, I went straight to the bathroom, changed, and threw the wrapper away deep in the trash so nobody would see. At dinner, my father studied me like he was inspecting a product. "You seem quiet," he said. "I'm tired," I answered. He leaned back. "Is it that time?" My fork paused in midair. My stomach dropped. "What time?" My brother smirked. My sisters stared at their plates like they didn't want to get involved. My father's gaze stayed locked on me. "Your period. Are you on it?" My face went numb. The entire table felt like it was tilting. I could practically hear my mother's earlier words. "Just tell them. Keep the peace." I forced my voice steady. "That's not your business." The air went sharp, like someone opened a freezer door. My father's jaw tightened. "Excuse me?" "It's my body," I said, my voice shaking now. "It's private." My brother made a gagging sound. "See? She's already acting weird." That did it. Something in me snapped. "I'm not weird. You're the one making it weird." My father slammed his palm on the table. Plates rattled. "Do not raise your voice at your brother." I'm not. My voice broke, and I hated myself for it. My father stood up slowly, towering over me. "You will not embarrass this family. If you want to live here, you will follow rules. And the rule is simple. You tell me when you are on your cycle." Cycle. Like I was a machine. My mother finally spoke, soft as a whisper. "Maybe just say it, sweetheart. It's not that big of a deal." I stared at her. My own mother. The one person who should have protected me, and she was asking me to hand my privacy over like a peace offering. I pushed my chair back. "I'm done eating." My father's voice followed me like a chain. Then "I'm not done talking." He lectured me for an hour that night. About respect, about communication, about how men had it harder because they had to deal with women's moods and they deserved warnings. Warnings, like my existence came with an advisory label. And the craziest part, over time, my mother started treating it like a normal courtesy too. Like telling the men in the house was the same as telling someone you're running a fever. But it wasn't about health. It was about control. By the time I was in high school, I got good at lying. I'd say it started a day later than it did. I'd say it ended early. Sometimes I'd just say it happened even when it hadn't, just to stop the questions. It felt disgusting to manipulate the truth about my own body, but it felt even worse to have them monitoring me like a calendar. And whenever I showed any emotion, they'd use it against me. If I cried, my father would mutter, "Must be that time." If I got mad, my brother would grin and say, "Someone's hormonal." If I was quiet, my mother would glance at me like she was checking for symptoms. It trained me to swallow everything. Pain, anger, joy, grief. Because in that house, my feelings were never just feelings. They were always evidence. When I finally left for college, I thought the distance would cut the cord. I thought I could breathe. But my family doesn't let go easily. My mother would call and ask innocent questions that weren't innocent at all. "How are you feeling, honey? Are you getting enough rest? Any changes lately?" And if I sounded stressed, she'd say, "Have you told your father? You know he worries." Worries. That was her word for it. My father didn't worry. He watched. He measured. He decided what I was allowed to keep to myself. Then came my graduation. 4 years of working 2 jobs. 4 years of surviving exams, rent, roommates, and the constant ache of knowing my family only loved me when I behaved correctly. 4 years of imagining them finally showing up and being proud. 2 weeks before the ceremony, my mother called, excited, talking about hotels and outfits. For a moment, I let myself believe we were normal. I let myself picture a photo with my cap and gown, My mother crying happy tears, then she cleared her throat. Your father wants to talk about the issue. My chest tightened. What issue? You know, she said softly. He feels like you've been disrespecting him for years. I already knew where this was going, and my hands started sweating. This isn't happening right now. Honey, he's coming to your graduation. He doesn't want tension. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. He created the tension. My mother's voice got strained. He's your father, and I'm his daughter. I shot back. Not his property. Silence on the line. Then she said it. Quiet, careful, like she was placing a bomb on the table. He wants you to agree that when you're visiting home, you'll tell him, just like before. He says it's a house rule. My stomach dropped so hard I felt nauseous. Are you kidding me? I'm an adult. It's just a courtesy, she insisted, and I could hear the pleading. Please, just do it. For this one weekend, for your graduation. For this one weekend, that's how it always starts. Just this once. Just to keep the peace. Just to make him happy. And then you wake up and realize you handed your boundaries away piece by piece. My voice went cold. No. My mother inhaled like I'd slapped her. Please don't do this. I'm not doing anything, I said, heart pounding. I'm refusing to be humiliated. He says it's not humiliation, she whispered. He says it's responsibility. I stared at the wall of my dorm room, feeling something old rise up in my throat. That 11-year-old girl on the armchair, the burning cheeks, the word hormonal like a brand on my skin. I spoke slowly, carefully, like I was talking to someone who might finally understand. If he comes to my graduation, he comes because he's proud of me, not because I agreed to report my body like a schedule. My mother's voice turned small. He says if you won't respect his rule, then you don't respect him. I felt my eyes sting again. This time I didn't swallow it. Then he can stay home. The line went dead quiet. And that's where everything truly began to fall apart. Because an hour later, my phone buzzed with a message from my father that made my blood run cold. My father's message wasn't long, but it felt like it carried the weight of a door slamming shut. It read, if you can't follow the rules of a respectable household, don't expect us to show up and pretend you're a respectable daughter. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. My fingers went numb, like my body was trying to protect me by shutting parts of itself off. The cruelest thing wasn't even the threat. It was the way he framed it, like I was the one making a scene. I typed back. I'm not asking you to pretend. I'm asking you to come because you love me. The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, the reply came. Love requires respect. You've been selfish since you were a girl, always demanding privacy like you're hiding something. You know why men need to know. You just want control. Control. My stomach twisted. For a second, I actually wondered if I was crazy, if I really was selfish, if all families talked about this and I was overreacting. Then I remembered being 11, being forced to announce bleeding like an apology, being watched at the dinner table like a mood forecast, being told my emotions were symptoms, and something inside me hardened. I didn't respond. I walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the tub with my phone in my lap, breathing like I'd been running. My reflection in the mirror looked older than it should have. Tired eyes, tight jaw, a face that learned early how to hold tears behind its teeth. My roommates were in the living room laughing at some show, normal college life, normal problems, and I was in here shaking because my father still thought he had the right to know what my uterus was doing. My mother called again that night. I almost didn't pick up, but I did, because part of me still wanted her to choose me. Her voice was sweet at first, too sweet. Honey, I talked to him. And? I asked, already knowing. She sighed. He's hurt. He feels like you're rejecting him. I'm rejecting a rule, I said, not him. But he can't separate it, she answered. In his mind, it's the same. I clenched my free hand. Why are you saying it like that's normal? She paused. Because it is normal in a family to communicate. About my period? I snapped. To my father and brother. It's not like that, she insisted, voice cracking slightly. It's just a heads up. A heads up for what? I demanded. So they can label me hormonal if I have feelings. Silence. Then softer, he never meant to hurt you. That sentence did something to me. It always did. It turned pain into an argument, like intent mattered more than impact. I swallowed hard. Mom, I have a graduation. One day that's supposed to be about me, and he's making it about this. I know, she whispered. I know. But if you would just agree to tell him when you visit home, it would smooth everything over. I laughed again, but this time it sounded broken. So I have to trade my dignity for him to clap when I walk across the stage? It's not a trade, she pleaded. It's compromise. Compromise. Another word that always meant I surrendered and everyone else stayed comfortable. I pressed my forehead against the cool bathroom wall. If you were in my position, would you do it? She hesitated, and that hesitation was my answer. My voice went quiet. Mom, I'm not doing it. If he wants to miss my graduation because I won't announce my period, then that's his choice. Her breathing hitched. She says if you keep being stubborn, it will ruin the family. I closed my eyes. No, his obsession ruined the family. Years ago, she started to cry. I could hear it, the soft, wet sound of someone trying not to sob. And my heart cracked anyway because I didn't want to hurt her. I just wanted her to stop handing me over to him. Please, she whispered. Just for this weekend. I pictured it. Walking into my childhood home, my father watching me like a guard, my brother smirking, my mother hovering. Then the question, blunt and casual at the kitchen counter. Are you on it? And me, an adult, answering like a child obeying roll call. I exhaled slowly. No, I threw myself into finals and work shifts, trying to outrun the dread, but it followed me into every quiet moment, every time I saw a graduation cap display, every time someone asked if my family was excited. My friends talked about their parents coming, their siblings decorating signs, their moms making reservations for dinner afterward. I smiled and said, yeah, they're coming, because the truth felt too humiliating. Then graduation day came, and the lie finally died in public. I stood behind the curtain in my gown, hearing the roar of the crowd on the other side. My heart hammered like it wanted to escape my chest. I checked my phone again, hoping for a last-minute message. Nothing. I had asked the event staff to save 4 seats. I had convinced myself that my mother would show up anyway, even if my father didn't, because she was kind, because she was communicative, because she always claimed to care. But when I stepped on stage and looked out, I saw the empty row like a wound. After the ceremony, graduates poured into the lobby like a river, hugging families, posing for pictures, laughing and crying. I drifted through it like a ghost. A woman I barely knew from one of my classes ran up and squealed, "Oh my God, you did it!" She hugged me, then stepped back and looked around. "Where's your family?" The question hit me right in the throat. I tried to answer, but my mouth wouldn't cooperate. My eyes went hot. My face did that thing it always did, trying to be brave even when my body was begging to collapse. "They're not here," I managed. Her smile fell. "Oh, I'm sorry." I nodded like it was fine. Like it didn't matter. Like I wasn't standing in the middle of the happiest day of my life feeling like the smallest person in the room. I walked outside into the bright sun and sat alone on the steps. The air smelled like cut grass and hot concrete. People passed by in waves. I watched strangers celebrate while my phone stayed silent in my lap. Then it buzzed. A text from my brother. "Congrats. Dad says you made your choice. Don't expect sympathy when life hits you. My hands started shaking again. The cruelty felt casual, like he was repeating something he'd heard his whole life, like it was normal to punish a sister for wanting privacy. I didn't answer. Another buzz, this time a picture message. It was a photo of the dining table at home. My mother had set plates. My sisters were there. My father sat at the head like a king. In the center of the table was a cake. I stared at those comments, my throat tight because it felt like being 11 again. Like my father's voice had multiplied into a crowd, but the supportive comments were louder. Strangers told me that's not courtesy, that's control. One person wrote, he didn't want to understand you. He wanted you to perform obedience. Another said, your mom isn't kind, she's trained. I didn't sleep. I kept scrolling until my eyes burned, watching strangers dissect my life with a clarity I'd never been allowed to have. Then sometime around 3 a.m., a private message popped up from someone claiming to be a nurse. It said, just so you know, some controlling parents use cycle tracking to monitor pregnancy risk. Not mood, be careful. My stomach dropped. I reread that line over and over. Pregnancy risk. I had never even let my mind go there because it sounded too dark, too extreme, too much like accusing my father of something worse than control. But control was already bad enough. I told myself the nurse was overreaching. I told myself people online always jump to the worst conclusions. I told myself my father was just weird, traditional, overprotective, whatever word made it easier to swallow. And then my phone rang. It was my mother. I let it ring twice, 3 times. I almost ignored it. But curiosity and dread pulled my thumb toward the screen. The second I answered, she said, did you post something online? My body went cold. What? Her voice was breathless, panicked, like she'd run outside barefoot. Did you write something about our family? My heart started pounding. How would you even know? A pause, sharp and guilty. Then, your sister saw it. I sat up in bed, the blanket sliding off my shoulders. How did she see it? I didn't share it with anyone. She follows those kinds of pages. My mother whispered. She recognized details. The graduation, the cake, she showed your father. I stared at the wall like it might tilt and swallow me. So instead of apologizing, they hunted down my post. Please, my mother said quickly. Just take it down. Your father is furious. I laughed once bitter. He was furious when I was 11. That didn't stop him. He says you're humiliating him, she insisted. He says you're lying. My fingers curled around the phone. He humiliated me. He made me report my period like it was his business. My mother's voice shook. He says it was his business. He says you're unstable. He says this proves it. Unstable. There it was. The old label, the one that made it easier for them to dismiss me. I swallowed hard. What exactly did he say? My mother hesitated like she didn't want to repeat it. Like speaking it aloud would make it uglier. He said, if you're willing to tell strangers on the internet, you should have been willing to tell your father. And he said, you've always been dramatic during your cycle. My skin prickled. So he's still making it about that. Honey, please, she pleaded. He wants you to call him. He wants you to apologize. I squeezed my eyes shut, hearing my own heartbeat thud in my ears. I'm not apologizing for telling the truth. He said, if you don't take it down, he's going to tell the family what kind of daughter you are, she warned, voice trembling. The threat was so familiar, it almost didn't hurt at first. Then it sank in. The way he could reach outward and poison everyone against me. The way he could rewrite me as the villain, so he never had to face what he'd done. I kept my voice steady. Let him. My mother inhaled sharply, like she couldn't believe I'd said it. You don't understand. He already called your uncle. He said you're having issues, that you need help, that you're making things up because you're, emotional. My stomach twisted. He's using the period thing to discredit me. Silence. Then my mother said very softly, he says you're doing this because you're hiding something. That sentence hit me like a shove, because it was the same accusation he'd thrown at me since I was a child. Privacy equals guilt. Boundaries equal secrets. No space for a daughter to simply be a person. I'm not hiding anything, I said, shaking now. I'm trying to have one part of my life that belongs to me. My mother whispered, just take it down, please. I can't handle him like this. And there it was. The real reason, not because I was wrong, not because it was harmful, because my father was raging and my mother needed me to be the sacrifice that calmed him down. I felt something inside me go quiet, not numb, just settled. No, I said. My mother started crying again. Why are you doing this? I stared at the ceiling, my voice flat with exhaustion. Why didn't you come to my graduation? A long, awful pause. Then she said, because I was scared. And that was the most honest thing she'd ever admitted. I hung up without saying goodbye. My phone buzzed immediately with a text from my brother. Delete the post. Dad's not playing. You want to ruin the family? Keep going. Then another message, this time from one of my sisters. You're embarrassing us. Everyone is talking. Dad says you're making him look like a predator. Predator. My breath caught. My fingers hovered over the screen. I hadn't used that word. Not even close. I had written exactly what happened. Nothing more. But my father, in his panic, had jumped straight to the ugliest interpretation. And that told me something. People don't leap to predator unless there's something in them that recognizes how wrong it looks. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I opened my sister's message thread and typed, who said predator? She replied almost instantly, Dad did. He said you're implying he's sick. He said you're trying to destroy his reputation. He said people will think he watched you like that. Watched you like that. My throat went dry. That nurse's message flashed through my mind again. Pregnancy risk. I tried to breathe. I tried to stay rational. I tried to keep my mind from running into dark corners. Then my phone rang again. This time it was my father. I stared at his name on the screen. My finger hovered over decline. And then I answered because a part of me wanted to hear him say it. To hear him defend it. To hear him try to twist it. So I could finally stop wondering if I was crazy. His voice was cold, controlled, the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. You think you're clever? He said. I didn't speak. He continued. You put our private family business on the internet. You made me look like a monster. You made you look like you, I said quietly. A pause, then his voice sharpened. Do not take that tone with me. I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't back down. Why did you need to know? Every month. Why did my brother need to know? He scoffed. Because you were living in my house? That's not an answer, I said louder now. What did you do with that information? He was silent for a beat too long. Then he said, I kept track. My stomach dropped. You what? I whispered. His voice was defensive now, irritated that I didn't automatically accept his logic. I kept track. Someone had to. Your mother is forgetful, and you girls were always sneaking around acting like you could do whatever you wanted. I needed to know what was going on in my home. A cold wave moved through my body. You tracked my period. He snapped. Don't say it like that. I tracked patterns. It's called being responsible. My mouth went dry. You tracked all of us? Another pause. Then, like it was nothing, he said, of course. You think you were the only one with mood swings? I wasn't going to be blindsided. My skin crawled. I gripped the edge of my mattress until my knuckles hurt. Where did you keep track? He sounded annoyed, like I was asking about his taxes. In a notebook, sometimes on the calendar. It doesn't matter where. A notebook. My mind flashed back to the kitchen calendar from my childhood. My mother circling dates for appointments, birthdays, bills. My father sometimes scribbling reminders. Had that been there the whole time? Had my cycle been marked somewhere my brother could see? I forced myself to speak. So you weren't asking for courtesy. You were collecting data. He exploded. Do not accuse me of something disgusting. You are sick for even thinking like that. I felt tears rise, but this time they weren't shame. They were fury. I didn't accuse you, I said, voice shaking. You called yourself a predator first. You went quiet. quiet again. And then very softly he said, "If you don't delete that post, I will make sure you regret it." The line went dead. I sat there, frozen, phone still against my ear, listening to the empty hum of the call ending. My hands were trembling. My stomach churned. My mind kept replaying his words. Notebook, calendar, kept track. I didn't even realize I was standing until I was in my closet, pulling out an old storage box I'd brought from home when I moved out. Childhood junk, old letters, random papers my mother had shoved into my hands like, "Take it. It's yours." I dug through it like I was possessed. And at the bottom, under an old yearbook and a stack of photos, I found something I hadn't seen in years. A small pocket calendar. One of those cheap ones my father used to keep in his work drawer. My breath caught. I flipped it open. And there in his handwriting were tiny marks on certain dates. Little coded symbols. Notes so small they almost looked like mistakes. But they repeated. Month after month, my knees went weak because I suddenly understood what I was looking at and why my father was so terrified of that post going viral. My eyes scanned. Those marks again. Slower this time, like I was reading a language I should have never had to learn. There were different symbols, not random at all. One kind of mark showed up every month like clockwork. Another appeared a few days later. Sometimes there was a tiny note beside it. Just a letter or two, like a code only he understood. I flipped through the months, my fingers trembling. The same symbols repeated in patterns. Stacked, layered, like he wasn't tracking one person. He was tracking all of us. I tried to breathe, but my chest felt too tight, like my ribs were shrinking. My mind kept flashing back to little moments I'd filed away as normal. My father asking me at breakfast, "Are you sure it started?" My brother smirking when I got quiet. My mother suddenly offering to check my backpack for pads before a trip, like she was helping. I thought it was nosiness. I thought it was his obsession with respect, but this was organized. This was deliberate. I grabbed my laptop and searched for common cycle tracking symbols just to calm myself down, just to prove I was spiraling. But nothing looked exactly like his marks, because this wasn't an app. This was a man building his own private system. Pulled out a notebook and wrote down the dates with the most frequent symbol. Then I compared them to what I remembered from high school. The months when my cramps were so bad I missed gym class. The months when my mother bought extra pads. The months when my father would randomly forbid me from going out on a weekend without giving a reason. The dates matched too often to be coincidence. My hands started to go numb again. The buzzing of my phone made me jump. Another text from my brother. "Dad says you have until morning." I stared at that message like it was a dare. And then, for the first time in my life, I did something I'd never done before. I didn't run the problem through my mother's fear. I didn't ask myself what would keep the peace. I asked myself what would keep me safe. I called a friend, the kind of friend who listens with their whole face, who doesn't try to soften ugly truths. I told her everything. The rule, the graduation, the cake, the phone call where he admitted tracking it, the pocket calendar in my hands right now. There was a long silence on the line, and then she said, "That's not normal. That's not a dad being strict. That's controlling, and it's creepy. You need to document everything." Her certainty made me want to cry, because it felt like someone finally handed me solid ground. I took photos of the calendar, close-ups of the marks, then wider shots to show it was real. I saved screenshots of my father's texts. I saved my brother's threats. I wrote down word for word what my father said on the call while it was still fresh. Then I called my mother again. She answered on the second ring like she'd been waiting, voice tight. "Did you delete it?" "No," I said. She exhaled like she was in pain. "Please." "Mom," I interrupted, shaking. "I found one of his calendars." Her breathing changed. A quick inhale, like her lungs forgot what to do. "I found the marks," I continued, voice rising. "Different symbols, repeating every month. It's not just me. He tracked all of us." A small sound escaped her. Half sob, half gasp. "You shouldn't have that." "You knew," I whispered. Silence. My stomach dropped even lower. "You knew," I repeated, this time not as a question but as a realization. My mother's voice came out thin. "It was easier." That word landed like a punch. "It was easier to let him do that?" I asked, feeling my throat burn. "To let him make me announce it to my brother like I was reporting a crime?" She started crying hard now. "You don't understand what he's like when he thinks he's losing control." I clenched my teeth. "I understand perfectly. I grew up with it." She whispered. "He said women lie. He said girls hide things. He said if he didn't keep track, we'd get pregnant and ruin our lives." My skin went cold. The nurse's message echoed in my mind. "So it was about pregnancy," I said, barely audible. My mother didn't deny it. That was the answer. I swallowed, my mouth dry. "And you let him?" "I was trying to protect you," she cried. "No," I said, voice shaking with fury and grief. "You were trying to protect him from his own fear." She sobbed. "If you expose him, he'll destroy everything." I stared at the photos on my phone, the little marks, the tiny coded notes, my father's handwriting, neat and confident, like he'd never once considered it wrong. I spoke slowly. "He already destroyed everything. He just did it quietly." My mother's voice dropped to a whisper, terrified. "He's saying he's going to come there." The air left my lungs. "What?" I asked. "He said you've embarrassed him," she whispered. "He said he needs to handle it in person." My heart started pounding so hard it hurt. "Mom, where is he right now?" "I don't know," she cried. "He left the house." My friend's words came back to me. "Document everything. Keep yourself safe." I told my mother, "If he shows up, I'm calling the police." My mother gasped like I'd threatened murder. "Don't do that, please." "I'm not doing this anymore," I said, and my voice surprised me because it sounded strong. "I'm not being scared into silence." I hung up and immediately called campus security to ask what to do if someone showed up. They told me to stay inside, keep my doors locked, and call emergency services if I felt threatened. They didn't laugh. They didn't minimize it. They treated it like it mattered. That alone made me feel less crazy. Then I opened my post again. My hands hovered over the keyboard. My pulse was loud in my ears. I thought about my mother crying, trapped in that house with him. I thought about my sisters being pressured to side with him. I thought about my brother parroting threats like loyalty was his job. And I thought about that cake. "Respect your father." I typed an update. I didn't add new accusations. I didn't add dramatic labels. I simply wrote what my father admitted on the phone, and that I had found written evidence he tracked all the women in the house with coded marks. I said I wouldn't share the photos publicly unless I needed to protect myself from lies. Then I pressed post. The response was immediate and explosive. People flooded the comments telling me to go no contact, to protect my mother if I could, to consider therapy, to file a report if I felt unsafe. Some begged me to share the proof. Some warned me not to because it could escalate. And then something happened I didn't expect. A message came in from a family member I barely spoke to. Someone from the respect your elders side of the family. It said, "Is this true? Call me." My throat tightened. Another message followed, then another. People who had never defended me before suddenly wanted details, because my father's power in the family had always relied on one thing: Silence. And now the silence was gone. The next day, my mother texted me from a number I didn't recognize. I'm at a friend's house. He doesn't know where I am. My chest ached with a strange mix of relief and heartbreak. She wrote again. He screamed for hours. He blamed you. He blamed me. He said you're trying to ruin him. Then he grabbed his notebook and started ripping pages out like he could. Erase time. I stared at those words, imagining him panicking, not because he regretted hurting me, but because he hated being seen. My mother's next message was shorter. I should have come to your graduation. I didn't know what to do with that. It felt too late and too small, like putting a bandage on a deep cut after years of pretending it wasn't there. I replied, I needed you then. She didn't respond for a long time. When she finally did, it was one sentence. I need you now. And I sat there, phone in my hand, thinking about the little girl I used to be, thinking about the empty seats, thinking about the banner with my name under harsh lights, thinking about how my whole life I'd been trained to swallow discomfort so other people could feel safe. My father sent one last message that night. You can come home and apologize, or you can lose your family forever. I stared at it until my eyes burned. Then I blocked his number. I blocked my brother too. I blocked anyone who sent me threats. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like someone had finally taken a weight off my shoulders and my body didn't know how to stand without it. A week later, my mother called from that same unknown number. Her voice sounded different, quieter. Not soft like submission, but quiet like someone standing in a doorway they've been afraid to cross for years. She said, I found more calendars. My stomach clenched. She continued, I'm bringing them to you. I can't unsee it now. We met in a coffee shop 2 towns over. When she slid the bag across the table, my hands shook again. Not from fear this time. From the reality of what we were doing. Inside were multiple small calendars and a notebook with pages half torn out, like my father tried to destroy it but didn't finish. My mother looked at me with wet eyes. I thought I was keeping peace, she whispered, but I was feeding him. I didn't forgive her in that moment. I couldn't. Forgiveness wasn't a switch. I could flip just because she was finally awake, but I did something else. I reached across the table and held her hand anyway, because for the first time, she wasn't asking me to sacrifice myself to calm him down. She was choosing to step away from him, even if it meant losing the life she'd built around his control. We sat there for a long time, hands clasped, both of us shaking, both of us grieving the family we thought we had. Later that night, I opened my post one more time and stared at the comments. People wanted justice. People wanted proof. People wanted drama, but what I wanted was peace. I wrote a final update saying my mother was safe, I was safe, and I was taking steps to protect myself legally if needed. I didn't post the photos. I didn't need the internet to validate me anymore. I had the calendars in my hands. I had his own words. I had reality. Still, even with all that, one thought kept whispering in the back of my mind as I lay in bed listening to the quiet of my apartment. If my father truly believed he did nothing wrong, why did he try so hard to erase the evidence the second strangers saw it?